The APC Presidential Campaign Council, in trying to sell the candidacy of Tinubu, talks about the blueprint of Lagos and how it has worked down the line. But there are those who are concerned and accuse Tinubu of taking glory for the developmental strides of the likes of Ambode and Fashola, claiming that it is his blueprint. How do you respond to people like this?
Well, I would say that they are just not very well informed about the philosophy of administration of Lagos State, and for us to be able to properly enlighten, those who are such uninformed, it's important and imperative for us to go to the background, of the advent of Tinubu or Tinubu's political hegemony in Lagos. Don't forget that prior to 1999, we had a military regime for almost 13 unbroken years. And today, there is none of the presidential contenders that was involved in the struggle to enthrone this current democracy that we are practicing other than Tinubu, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So he had been involved actively in the struggle to actualize democracy, via the struggle for June 12, via the operations of the famous Nadeko locally and abroad. Now, after coming back home, when the military of General Abdulsalami Abubakar opened up the vista for politics, he came back and contested, won the elections and became governor. Now, here, till date, Bola Ahmed Tinubu remains the only one political operator of this current dispensation, this current Fourth Republic, that has recorded many firsts in all spheres of governance. First of all, when he became governor-elect, he was the first in the history of Nigeria to set up a transition council. It had never happened before then. He set up a transition council comprising professionals, technocrats, political pundits, social activists, human rights activists as well, and brought them together. And this transition council on its own now constituted 23 transition committees covering all areas of
Mr. Alake, if I may come in here, my apologies.
Yes.
The question
I was building the case for how the political philosophy and governance of Lagos was established by Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It's important for people to be enlightened to know that his blueprint, it was this transition committee that he set up that now devised the blueprint. It was a 10-point program which was announced, propagated widely. And it was this same transition committee that handed over this blueprint to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He led the entire transition committee anyway. He set it up. And upon assuming office, he laid out this blueprint and now constituted a cabinet, which today, arguably, still stands as one of the best in the history of Nigeria in state administration. That first-term cabinet.
Mr. Alake.
And that cabinet now began the implementation and execution of this blueprint.
Mr. Alake, just a second. Critics question whether successive governors are not allowed to have developmental ideas, or if they must follow. I'm drawing your attention to what happened in the case of Ambode. In that situation, many said that he worked for Lagos State, but according to the reports that followed, why he was not given an opportunity to go for a second term, he went outside just blueprint. How do you respond to that?
No, I disagree with that viewpoint. What happened was that there was a misapplication, and I'll give you an example. Let me give you an example. Prior to 1999, those who lived in Lagos knew the environmental situation of Lagos. When Tinubu resumed in 1999, there were dung hills of refuse dotting the landscape of Lagos. In fact, worse than that, there were dead bodies, corpses, littering the highways, the streets and highways of Lagos. So many people, it's easy to forget these things. And that was what led Tinubu to establish the emergency ambulance service called Lasembos in 1999 that started picking up dead bodies on the streets of Lagos, on the highways of Lagos. In fact, it got bad at some point that one American woman, a black woman, American black woman, who was married to a Nigerian on Third Mainland Bridge, saw cars, vehicles running over a dead body. And she got up and she became mentally unstable because she couldn't take that in. That horrific sight, she couldn't take it in. And she left Nigeria at that time and never returned. Now, Asiwaju started picking up the corpses, reading the streets of Lagos. In the last 20 years, most people who came to Lagos or who reside in Lagos, they are used to not seeing corpses littering the streets, and they take it for granted. But we know how it happened. It was Asiwaju. So that environmental thing, and then the dung hills, the refuse that littered the streets of Lagos, Asiwaju cleared it. In fact, when he called the big construction companies, Julius Berger and the rest of them, to give a bill for cleaning Lagos of refuse, they brought the bill of billions every month, which the state government couldn't afford. And that was what led to the establishment of the PSP, the private sector participation in refuse clearing in Lagos. And that now employed almost more than 5,000 to 10,000 people to be clearing the streets. And in fact, the federal government of Ministry of Works then gave an award to Lagos State for the creation of the PSP, the private sector participation in refuse clearing in Lagos, which then cleaned Lagos. Now, this particular policy became very well established and was working and put people in employment. Now, Fashola came into office, maintained it, enhanced it, strengthened it. Because you don't change a winning horse. So when Abode came, peremptorily, that policy was disregarded without proper scrutiny, without proper homework. Now, there's no crime in introducing a new idea at all. But you must also be circumspect in the way you introduce it. You must introduce it efficiently to make it work so as not to disregard or entirely erode the previous gains. Your new idea must consolidate on the current gains. It must not erode the gains and take the society back to the old days. That was what happened with the environment. And the people of Lagos rose in unison. In fact, the market women...
Can I ask you this question, Mr. Alake? Mr. Alake?
It's not a question of not veering from the policy. It's a question of strengthening the policies. You don't change a winning horse, like I said.
Mr. Alake, those who insist on Tinubu's high-handedness in Lagos also question whether or not Ambode did some good work in Lagos to have deserved a second term, and wonder whether Tinubu will not replicate this godfatherism at the national level should he become president.
Now, the notion of godfatherism has been given a negative connotation in the political lexicon of Nigeria, and by those who are unnecessarily envious of others, not because they do not wish to be godfathers. If they could have it, if they could work for it, if they had the mental and physical wherewithal to also become a godfather, there's nothing absolutely wrong with godfatherism if that godfatherism is public-spirited. Now, Awolowo, our revered sage, was a godfather. Why? Because he produced many other leaders. Our revered leader, Sir Ahmadu Bello, the late Sardauna, was a godfather. because he produced many leaders. Dito Nnamdi Azikiwe, he was a godfather because he also sired leaders politically. So therefore, why should Tinubu's own be given a negative connotation simply because some people who are indolent, who are lazy, suffused with inertia and lethargy, cannot work assiduously and attain a height, a political height, through which they could also develop other leaders and become positive godfathers. So there's nothing essentially, inherently, innately wrong with being a godfather.
All right.
As long as it is public spirited.
All right. Let's talk about his antecedents now. For example, the health sector. How well would you say that he developed the health sector in Lagos State?
Fantastically. In fact, I must tell you, my brother, he recorded so many firsts, like I said, in virtually all spheres of governance, like no other person. In the area of health, for instance, I recall that when we were in the Executive Council, and he brought out this idea of us instituting free eyeglasses, free eye surgeries to remove cataract, glaucoma, and all that. And everybody clapped. The Commissioner for Health then, Dr. Alake, of course, very agile person, had worked everything out, and Asiwaju gave it his blessings. But he said, and he insisted, that we must first start it with the commercial vehicle drivers. And he said, why? We asked why. He said, because all of you individuals, private citizens, you drive your own vehicle or you join others in their vehicles. He said, but for commercial drivers, for each commercial driver, each one of them is responsible for the lives and safety of several commuters that they carry. So for each commercial driver that you improve the eyesight, you are saving not only his life, but you are saving the lives of scores of his commuters, of his passengers that he ferries to and fro every day. And that made sense. So
Mr. Alake,
we started on that, and we started giving. He was the first to establish that in the history of Nigeria. 2, we went and extended it to other areas, market women, the poor, and all of that.
Mr. Alake, we're almost out.
Those who had no means.
Pardon me to come in here.
And then.
Mr. Alake, my apologies.
Okay, we need to get a litany of it.
Well, absolutely. We need to wrap this up. But if you say that he's done so well in the health sector in Lagos State, there are those who question if
it's not just
just a second. I specifically asked. I asked about the health sector. The health sector. So you say that he developed the health sector in Lagos State. He brought in some innovations, and some still question why he would still travel outside the country for Medicare. If he's done so well and improved the health sector in Lagos State, why wouldn't he take medical attention in Lagos State?
Oh, yes, of course he does every day. It's just that don't forget that you don't have it all. Don't forget that government or governance is a continuous progress. I mean, it's a continuous work in progress. Now, there is no society in the world that has gotten it in all areas at par. There's none. So therefore, every day I have seen him personally taking medications and the advice from his medical practitioners, the local medical practitioners. He visits the local hospitals whenever he's indisposed and all that. They come to the house again to service him medically, just like any one of us. However, there are certain types, we call it tertiary medical service. Now, when you're in tertiary medical service, you can't have all the latest technological developments, at the same time in your environment. You can't have it all. you will have some now, but if your ailment, for instance, is such that you do not have that particular remedy technologically in your environment, are you going to leave yourself and die?
All right, okay.
If the chance is there, no.
Is that like
so that he has gone abroad does not invalidate the giant strides that has been recorded in medical operations of Lagos State or under the health sector in Lagos State.